It was just another morning at the Cellular Organelle Police Department when Officer E1, an activating enzyme, was given an important piece of evidence to clean. He had heard mumbling around the station about some rogue protein who had created a large aggregate somewhere in the cell. Officer E1 could help catch him. Officer E1 had been in the forensics department at the COPD for a long time. He specialized in priming evidence in the form of ubiquitin for other officers to catch the suspects. He was the best in the department at this because of his cysteine group, his ability to gather ATP, and his strong partnership with Officer E2. He quickly grabbed a handy ATP and reacted it with the glycine group on the ubiquitin, conjugating it to AMP. He then used his cysteine group to grab the activated carbon on the glycine group of the ubiquitin.
"Officer E2 will love my work,"
he proudly exclaimed. Officers E1 and E2 had been close friends since Officer E1 joined the COPD after his police training. Officer E1 barely knew anyone in the department, but Officer E2 was always the first person to give Officer E1 a pat on the back for his fine work. The officers shared something in common. They both had cysteine groups. Officer E2 walked up to Officer E1 and used her cysteine group to grab the activated ubiquitin. "Great work as always, E1!" she cheered. Officer E2, a carrier enzyme, had been working at the COPD for a while and knew which pieces of evidence were strong enough to convict the suspect of a crime. She specialized in bringing these pieces of evidence to detectives and helping them link the evidence to a suspect. She knew much more about cases than Officer E1, who was always stuck in the forensics room at the police station. She had been communicating much with Detective E3, who had told her that there had been a huge disturbance with a rogue protein who was responsible for creating a large aggregate. With her evidence, she raced over to Detective E3. Detective E3 was a ubiquitin ligase who had been working on this particular case for some time now. Detective E3 had at this point arrested the suspect and had stacked some evidence against him. This new piece of evidence might just be enough for the suspect to be convicted. Detective E3 held the suspect while Officer E2 reacted the suspect's lysine group with her cysteine group and tagged him with the evidence. He now had 6 pieces of evidence. Detective E3 decided that they had built a strong enough case to bring the suspect to court. He dismissed Officer E2 and thanked her for her hard work. The suspect was found guilty of disturbing the peace. Judge Proteasome was responsible for carrying out the convict's sentence. She removed the evidence from the convict and sent him into her personal jail. While in jail, the judge helped the convict undergo an extreme transformation. When he was released in the form of peptide fragments, he no longer resembled his prior self and dedicated each new piece of himself to do good. All thanks to the COPD and Judge Proteasome, peace was restored in the cell.